All right, with that thundering intro, we're ready to go with this next session. I'm Alan Levine, your host for this, and I'm really excited to have my colleague. You may have heard of this guy, Martin Weller. We'll be hearing about care and community in the GOGN network, which is the Global OER Graduate Network, which is really a fascinating project. And so Martin is representing Rob Farrow, Beck, Pitt, and Paco Iniesto. So welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Alan. Good to see you. Good to see everyone. I've also got the stream going on the side, so if you see me looking down at the side, it's because I want to see what everyone else is seeing. Hi, it's good to be here. So I'm going to be talking about care and community in the GOGN network, which some of you might be familiar with the GOGN network, but I'll explain it if not. So structure of talk, I'll talk about what the GOGN aim to do and what we usually do. We've been going for about 8 years now. And then 2020 comes along and how we had to think completely differently and what that meant. And then sort of think about how did that go? What was it like? And any sort of lessons we can learn from that. I'm hoping not to talk for all the time because there might be some GOGN people in the audience, and perhaps I'd like to hand over to them to say how it's been for them as well. Because I can tell you it's fantastic and they might go, God, it's awful. So the GOGN is the Global OER Graduate Network. Was set up 2013, 2014, I forget now, when OER was still quite an emerging field. And the idea was to try and grow the global research community. There were a lot of advocates, a lot of people saying OER is a good thing, but not an awful lot of kind of grounded research in it. And it was founded by Fred Mulder of the OU Netherlands, and then we took it on shortly after that at the Open University. So usually, it's aimed at doctoral students, so students who are studying at doctoral level in roughly the area of open educational resources, open educational practice. Now, usually we take them on an annual seminar. We bring them together for 2 sort of intensive days, and that's allied to a conference, either OER or OE Global. And then during the year, we also run a number of webinars. We've got a very active social media presence. We send out newsletters. We share resources. We try to create this kind of very supportive network. We also give out 2 awards every year for best paper and best open educational practice, which we've named after Fred Mulder. And we try to not just get people to research into open educational practice or open educational resources, but also to model that practice as well. And so we spend a lot of time on encouraging that. So really, I put the seminar in sort of bold in the previous slide because that's really the kind of heart of what we do, really. So we get together about 10 or 15 students. We bring them all to one place, one location. So that's been Cape Town, Galway, Delft, Krakow, and Banff, I think. And they all present their work to each other. And we try to get them from different stages of their PhD journey. So some will have finished, some will be coming up to the end, some will be just starting. We try to get a spread across countries and regions, topics and methodologies. So they're all sort of learning from each other. They give each other feedback on their presentations. And that can be quite an honest thing to do. They can sort of say to this group, I'm really stuck on my research questions. Can you help me? In a way perhaps that they couldn't do in other formats. And we also run sessions perhaps on developing your open practice or getting published, surviving the PhD, or even life after a PhD. And we register all the students at the conference they're associated with, and then often they go on and present there as well. So it's a really kind of intensive 2 days, and the people who come to that really sort of form good friendships. Often they go on to collaborate with each other long afterwards and work together on projects. So our plan was in 2020, we were going to ally this with OE Global, which was going to be in Taiwan in November. And then, oh dear. So like everything else, we had to perform an online pivot. And that's quite difficult, when such a kind of intensive face-to-face activity is really the kind of heart of what you do. And we see when we look back over our Twitter traffic or hits the website or downloads or anything, we always get a peak around the seminars because the people who are attending it are tweeting about GOGN, and it's kind of very active thing that's going on. So it was very difficult. We wanted to try and recreate that kind of buzz that would happen, but that's much more difficult without that kind of face-to-face setting. So what did we do? Some of this we sort of planned to do anyway, so it wasn't all just as a pivot, but some of it I think really helped to recreate some of that activity that we wanted. So we produced 3 outputs which were co-produced with GOGN members. We asked them to contribute, so I'm not sure if Rob's in the audience, but yeah, Rob's here. Rob Farrow sort of led on these. So the first was a methodology report, and I mentioned that we tried to get people to come together we could use different methods, and our members have used all the methods you want out there, and so we thought it would be a really useful thing together to put together all the methods that they've used and why they chose to use them and how they were applicable in OER and OER practice. And Brian Mathers, I think also in the audience, did some excellent graphics for us in that. And it made it a very kind of approachable document, even though it's a very deep document in many ways. And that's had over 7,000 downloads and was a winner at OE Global. And then in the summer, we did a research review. So here, Rob culled together a number of papers around OER research, and these were reviewed by members, and they sort of gave their views and summarised the papers. So that kind of gives you a really nice overview of kind of current research in the field. And then in December, we produced an annual report. So you can see all those there. Another thing we did was launched fellowships this year, and 3 of these people have spoken or are speaking at OER this year as well. So I won't sort of steal their thunder, but they're covering quite different topics actually, and they've been really interesting. So this is a small bit of funding, but it really kind of helps bridge that gap between when you finish doing your PhD and before you kind of manage to get major funding in and sort of sometimes continue the work for your PhD or try something a bit different. So kind of quite diverse topics and from people all around the globe. And we really felt we needed to ramp up the communications in the absence of that face-to-face seminar. So we set up a WhatsApp group. You know, I'm nothing if not late to the game, but you know, we set up a WhatsApp group, and that's been really useful. Actually, there's a lot of kind of just informal chat in there, you know, sort of people sharing things and how they feel, and that's kind of a really nice little back channel. We arranged a number of drop-in sessions. So usually at the seminars, we ask people if they want to have a chat with sort of 2 or more members of the team, like individually for them, just to talk about how their research is going. And so we tried to recreate those and schedule them at different times, just so people could sort of speak frankly, you know, I'm stuck, or have you got any ideas about this, and those kind of things. We arranged those. We carried on running webinars, which often usually GOGN members presented about their research. And we had seminars, one-day seminars associated with OER 20. There was a GOGN Gaster special at the Alt Summer Summit, and we had a seminar for OE Global. And we really sort of made extensive use of Twitter, so we ran a rota system, where each of us sort of takes it in turns to run that, to try and keep going. And we make a use of the newsletter as well. And I think in some ways that there's a real danger of over communication. I think, you know, we've got so many things going on. We're sort of firing stuff at our members all the time, and that can sometimes be a difficult thing to benefit. So one of the things we also wanted to do was try and give members real benefits for joining GOGN. So they're automatically members of Alt now, so they can just sign up and become members of Alt, which means they can get discounts to lots of conferences. We've given them Reclaim hosting sites if they want. So they can have their own site for 2 years from Reclaim hosting. And we've paid for conference attendance at the Summer Summit and OE Global last year as well. So one of the things we want to do is we realised we keep adding these extras, you know, and we weren't really communicating that well. So we created a nice little membership pack, which include all these things. And they include the fabulous Brian Mathers images as well. You can see all the penguins dancing here. So people can download those. They're Creative Commons license, obviously, and use them in their own presentations and things. And these were the award winners this year. So we had 1 winner for the paper and 2 runners-up and joint winners for Best Open Educational Practice. And this is a timeline of our activities. You can see we've kind of been trying to keep a thread of activity going throughout the year, just to kind of keep that momentum going, I think, and to provide people with a sort of a place to come to and talk about things. Because often, you know, obviously lots of people were in mid-research and then the pandemic comes along, and if you've been planning things like focus groups or things like that, something that can be hit as well, and lots of people feeling quite lost, or often the people who are our members are the people who universities or institutions were turning to. So how do you do this open education thing? So how did it go? How am I doing for time? Okay, yeah, cool. We gained 14 new members, and we've got about 115 members, so that's pretty good. We're not, because we're quite strict on who can join. You have to be registered to be doing a doctoral study. It has to be in the right sort of area. The reports, as I said, proved very popular. Twitter following increased. We had reasonable attendance at webinars. The last two, I don't claim to be things that we've done, but I think it's an indication of how important the network is and the influence of the people who are in that network now. So there are 45 peer-reviewed articles published by GOGN members, and an excellent GIME special issue, which was edited by Sarah Lambert and Laura Chernowitz, and Sarah was a GOGN member, and lots of GOGN members contributed articles that was on open education and social justice. So we conducted a survey, and these were the top 5 activities. So connecting with GOGN on social media was something that nearly everyone did, or a good proportion attended a GOGN webinar, joined in discussions, joined alt, and attended one of the seminars. Benefits, webinars came out top, actually. I think people really appreciated the support for attending conferences, just meant they didn't have to try and negotiate funding from wherever they were. And I mentioned that WhatsApp group. It's a very nice sort of informal group that they often share ideas for. And a lot of the papers and things they've collaborated on have come through that. And these were the most important. So the community of peers, I think, is probably the most obvious one there. So, and I think that's important because I think when we set GOGN up, it was really kind of trying to develop people's research expertise and make them, give them sort of somewhere to talk about research. But actually, the research things come out lower, and actually, it's much more the kind of emotional support, I think, that's important to people. And often our members say that they're the only person at their institution, or sometimes in their region or their country, who's actually interested in open education. So joining GOGN is a real kind of like life raft thing. So here are nice things that people have said about us. I've really valued the support the team give. There's an active leadership that seeks new opportunities. They're creating strong human bonds. That's an important one. We care for the network. So I think just in terms of lessons, I think the other activities we created did overall replace the activity profile for what we did in the seminar. So we had the same sort of traffic, same sort of number of sign-ups, those kind of things. So we managed to replicate that kind of buzz, I think, and that reputational work. But it wasn't easy. It was probably harder work than, bringing everyone together for a face-to-face seminar is really hard work. You've got people flying all over the world, you're arranging hotel accommodation, all that kind of stuff. Actually, when you're trying to conduct this stuff throughout the year to kind of keep that momentum going, it's quite hard. I still think face-to-face is important. I think, when we can, we'll get back together. We'll go back to that model. But I think we've learned a lot from this as well. I worry that it's maybe more difficult for new members to break into a group online. Whereas we always try to bring some new people to the seminars. And once they meet other people, they're then part of the GOGN massive. But one thing I would say is I think GOGN had always been a very caring network. So when the pandemic hit, it wasn't difficult for us to know what we needed to do, because care was kind of already ingrained in what we do. And I think that's very different. I think I saw lots of organisations last year who really based themselves around the kind of neoliberal model of selling services. When the pandemic hit, it was like they were confused. They didn't know what to do. It's like, how do we sell you something during this? And some then have gone and mercilessly try and sell people things. But I think, it was almost like they didn't know how to react in this time when people weren't interested in that, because what they wanted was care and support and those kind of things. And for those of you who've been following the story, I think you can see that with the European Super League and football teams in the UK recently. It's like that those football teams were so used to treating their their fans as consumers, that they were shocked then to find out that people actually wanted to be thought about and cared about, and they don't know how to act in that manner. Whereas I think, we kind of had that built in from the start. So just quickly looking forward, we've put out a call already so we did the methodological handbook last year, and Rob's leading on a conceptual framework handbook this year. So I think those two combined would be really powerful tools. We're obviously running this workshop, and we've launched a new fellowship scheme. In summer, there'll be the summer summit, and we'll sponsor people to go to that if they want. And there'll be a second research review, call for participation. We hope to publish the conceptual framework by then. And then in autumn, we'll run the survey again. And there's the GOGN seminar that will be allied with Open Education Global, which is currently scheduled to be in Nantes, France. But I think we still need to think about whether people could travel to that. That's still up in the air, I think. And then at the end of the winter, we'll run the awards and publish the annual review. So that's that. Please get in touch and chat to us. Thanks, Brian, for the graphics, as always. If we have time, do we have time, Meredith, Alan? Then we could ask if there are any GOGN members in the audience who want to speak to their experience of the past year.
Yeah, they've been actively peppering the stream, so we can see a lot of GOGN members and some new people, and the care there is obvious. No major questions coming in, but I can certainly see that, thinking about that, you have 100 plus members now, that's a benefit itself that will replicate as we can see as people are welcoming and expressing the care coming in. And I would say, when you do face-to-face, like coming through this period, is going to add even more to that.
Beck's reminded me, quick plugs, we've got a webinar on the 5th of May which is from new members presenting about their work. So that's a good point. So one of the things we had to do was, one of the things we did was to try, I think, to overcome that kind of barrier for new members, was to specifically target them and say, would you like to present about your work, send them kind of individual emails. And I think that kind of really helped then. So I think if you just say, would anyone like to present, often if you're new, you might not want to speak up. So I think kind of making it easier for them to come in.
We have a red herring question from Rob. Is ice hockey better than football?
It is, and that's why in the UK you should stop going to football and go to ice.
But you can see that this is obviously the whole networking effect has gone beyond being about necessarily open education, as you mentioned. And so I think there's a lot that folks can learn about creating and supporting this kind of network. And so I just respect it's a nice balance between trying to run a program and then giving the latitude to people in the network to give it direction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think it's really changed over the years. And to be honest, you don't have that many PhDs now, which are really about OER. It's shifted much more to kind of social justice and open educational practice, much like the OER conference, I think, in a way. There's very few presentations here that are, here's a resource I've created. It's much more kind of around care and the community and that kind of stuff. And I think, and that's been really important to learn. I think just being in this project, you kind of see how much, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of emotional support is really important. And I think it's interesting because when you produce project proposals, giving emotional support is rarely something you build into the proposal. But what are the what's the KPI? What's the metric for emotional support? The number of questions, the number of hugs you've given. How do you count this stuff? But actually, it's really important.
Here's a good question from Laura about how people who aren't necessarily not PhD.
Thanks, Laura. So we have two categorizations. So we have members who are the PhD doctoral students, and we have GOGN friends. So you can join as a friend, and then you'll get a lot of the newsletter and the updates and things we're doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. I would expect you'll get a lot more friend requests right now.
We can definitely be friends, Laura.
Oh, well, this has been fantastic. It's a taste, and I'm sure, there's what we see publicly, and I bet there's a whole kind of different level of care that you see when you're within the network too. So,
Yeah, the WhatsApp groups are a good place as well.
well, great. Let's, like the chat says, let's give Martin that and everybody in GOGN, Rob and Beck and Paco, a round of applause for sharing this program.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, everyone.
Nom nom nom.